Hey, what's up, you guys? Today we're talking about the music video Plus rien ne m'étonne and Les Imbéciles. So let's get into it. But first, let's get the background of these two artists. So, Tiken Jah is a reggae singer-songwriter from the Ivory Coast. He utilizes his music to speak up about the wrongdoings that Africans have experienced, and he also champions education. In 2009, he did a campaign called One Concert, One School, and through this campaign, he was able to pay for 2 schools to get built, which is really cool. His song Plus rien ne m'étonne is about the divided state of the world as a result of neocolonialism, which we'll get into in a moment. Now let's get into Alpha Blondy. Like Fakoli, Blondie is a reggae singer from the Ivory Coast. What's interesting about him is that he utilizes a lot of different languages in his music in order to reach more people. For instance, one of his albums I think included 6 different languages. And he also does a lot of humanitarian work with the poor and the children in Africa. And he was even named a UN Ambassador of Peace for the Ivory Coast in 2005. So he made the song Les Imbéciles, which talks about the conflicts that are happening within Africa, and it pleads for Africa to change how things are run. So what are we talking about today? Today we're answering the question, how does neocolonialism appear in Plus rien ne m'étonne and Les Imbéciles? Let's get into it. So neocolonialism is the control one country exerts over another, typically through indirect means. For Foucault's work, in the first 2 verses we get neocolonialism from the perspective of neocolonial forces, which is essentially just, oh, if you give me this place, I'll give you that place, and if you give me these resources, I'll aid you in this way. This divvying up of the world is really called out in the 3rd verse of his song, where he takes the perspective of the victims of neocolonialism by saying, they divided Africa without consulting us, and they wonder why we are disunited. These verses altogether really point out neocolonialism at work, with the them in this song taking control of Africa and separating it as they please without asking the permission of the us in this song. What's interesting about Foucault's work is that he simply just points out neocolonialism rather than making any sort of autocritical claim. However, I think that the lack of autocriticism works for the overall song because it makes the song feel much more somber by ending just on they've divided up the world and nothing surprises me anymore. And that message alone stirs up so much sadness that it sort of drives the audience to really sit and think about why the world is the way that it is and how we could go about changing it. Now, for Alpha Blondy, he takes a very different route when talking about neocolonialism. He touches on it at the very end of his song by saying it's globalization of the economy in one direction, with a single thought of the master thinker. This is a sort of dig at Africa for trying to build an economy that fits the mold of neocolonial forces' economies. However, the lyrics are mainly centered on autocriticism rather than neocolonialism, with Blondie talking about conflicts occurring within Africa and the fact that Africa's economy is crumbling despite the wealth of resources they have. I think that autocriticism really works in Blondie's favor here, just because of the overall vibe of the song. For Foucault, it was more of a melancholy sort of song where he just mentions neocolonialism and leaves it at that. There's no sort of overall message of what should be done. It's just simply supposed to have the audience reflect on how we've ended up in this situation. But for Alpha Blondie, it's more of a wake-up call than anything else. And so having it be so autocritical is really important because it's telling the African audience that, hey, what we've been doing so far really isn't working out for us, so we need to get it together and figure out something better for us. So overall, Foucault and Blondie both address neocolonialism in their works. However, Foucault really emphasizes how much of a victim Africa is to it, while Blondie focuses on addressing the part Africa plays in their struggles. That's all I have for today. Thanks, guys.